Quality time together. Let me just say first of all that I am married and I have children, so I'm used to interruptions. If you have, the way I normally start my presentation, so if you have questions, just put up your hand or get my attention in some way, and I'll answer them as we go along. So first of all, how do I come to be offering this session? As the associate dean, my previous role in grad studies, I've had occasion to be the chair of something in the order of 85 defenses. And a fair number of those defenses are in disciplines for which my ignorance is deep and perhaps troubling even. I come from the Faculty of Management, and therefore when anybody uses words like polyubiquitination, which is apparently a very common term in biochemistry, I absolutely have no clue whatsoever about what they're talking about. So what am I going to do for the 2.5 to 3 hours that the average defense takes when people are speaking English, but that's all I recognize? I recognize it as English, but I don't understand anything that is being said. So not wanting to waste an opportunity, of course, I ask myself that most important question that all of us in the Academy should ask on a regular basis. What can I learn from this experience? So I take notes, not so much about polyubiquitination, but about how the defense is going. And what observations I'm making about the behavior of the student, the behavior of the external examiner, the behavior of the examining committee, and the behavior of the audience. And so I have done this for quite a few times, and I keep notes, as every good writer does. I carry around a book like this. It's something that you should carry around for the rest of your life, and whenever you have a thought that you think you might want to remember, you write it down. So that's how I come to have a basis for making this presentation. And I should tell you that it's not that I'm an uninterested observer, it's that I'm disinterested, which is to say that I don't have any particular skin in the game, as it were. I don't have any investment in the outcome as the chair. So for those of you who don't know about PhD comics, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to procrastinate even further, because all of his material, most of his material is online. So it is possible to actually get to the end of your studies, and so apparently many of you are pretty close, but there are quite a few students at this university for whom this doesn't apply, and that's not the topic of today. So a good dissertation defense talks about basically two things. First of all, there is the dissertation piece of it, and the dissertation piece speaks to the particular document. And of course, all documents, all dissertations at the PhD level are expected to make an original contribution to knowledge and documents the research and its outcome and provides an opportunity to present the kind of thinking that the candidate has actually achieved. Now, you'll notice the overall document quality is an issue, and it's something we will come back to. Not least of which there's also a concern around the candidate, him or herself. So the idea is that the candidate has to demonstrate in the course of the presentation of his or her work and the interaction with the community in the room that they are appropriately socialized into the academic discipline. So academic cultures vary, and these differential academic cultures have an impact on the presentation as well. So you have to think about what the social norms of your particular community are, because a presentation in math, a defense in math, is quite different than a defense in English. The mathematics defenses tend to take something in the order of 75 minutes, whereas English defenses, we tend to have to shut them off after 3 hours. Because left to their own devices, 5 or 6 people in English will gladly spend an entire, well, I have no idea what the limit of their discussion might have been, but I'm not interested in testing it. So we shut it down after 3 hours. So The mechanics of the defense process, I'd like to just talk about the three phases, the piece before the defense, the piece during and after. So what we do at this university is you are required to go to the Faculty of Graduate Studies for a format check, and this is a way of the institution basically doing risk management, reputation management, so that we aren't sending out a document that's totally ridiculous to an external examiner, because external examiners are a very important asset and resource to us, and we depend on them for the integrity of the process. Now, so most of what I have to say applies at the PhD level. So you have the format check, and our crack format checking crew will tell you about things like, you know, your table of contents doesn't actually line up with the page numbers in the text, and your margins are going to make this difficult to reproduce, and you can't have it in an 8-point font because the people who are reading it are my age, and they got bifocals and they can't read 8-point. So all of those things have to be done before we send it off. Then you submit your your penultimate dissertation along with your CV. So if you don't know what a CV is, shame on us, because in fact we should have given you some good counsel around that. We have had students show up with no clue what a CV is, and that would be after 4 years of PhD study, so that was not a good moment for us up there. And then what we will do is arrange for an external examiner. So your committee, and typically it's your supervisor, will propose the names of 3 experts in the field, and they'll be submitted to the Associate Dean, Dr. Lee, and he'll have a look at them and try to make a considered judgment about whether these people are qualified and appropriate to be your external examiner. And there are certain rules that would prohibit somebody from being your examiner. For example, if they have co-published with you, not going to happen. If they've co-published in the last 6 years with your supervisor, not going to happen. We prefer not to have external examiners from the region for obvious reasons, because it's a small region and our relationships already exist, and the idea is to have a really genuinely objective examiner. And then we will arrange a time and place, and usually the place is this room. So this is where most of the PhD defenses will take place. This room has been specifically designed for the purpose. So it's got whiteboards over here for the chemistry folks, because the chemistry folks like to have a lot of diagrams, and they like to ask them tricky questions about diagramming molecules and all the rest of it. And we have the projection system, of course, and we also have somewhere in here a telecommunication port in the event that your external examiner cannot make the presentation, because you've arranged for the presentation to happen in Halifax in March, and there's a storm that comes in, and he's basically held up in the Newark airport. So the way that external examiner can participate is through an audio conference connect. Sometimes we have video conference connect by way of Skype as well. So all of those are permitted. So during the defense, we have this defense. What we do is usually the chair will introduce himself or herself to the candidate, and then we have the introductions of the candidate at the examining committee, beginning with the external examiner. The student has 20 minutes to present their research. And at the end of the 20 minutes, the examination process begins. There are usually 2 rounds of questions. The first round of both rounds of questions are begun with the external examiner, and the chair has the option and the responsibility for deciding about the allocation of time. And the usual rule, when I was the chair, the usual rule is that the external examiner I count the external examiner as the second most important person in the room, right after the student. And therefore we give a great deal of latitude to the external examiner so that that person can satisfy themselves about the quality of the understanding of the candidate about the dissertation. So you get those 2 rounds of questions, and then there's one last opportunity for the committee to ask questions, and at the end of that, we open the questions to the public. So all defenses at this university are open to the public. Dalhousie University does no secret research. We don't have any military contracts and biological, terrorism weapon kind of research. It's all public, and anybody from the public can show up and ask questions, making the assumption, of course, that the questions are in some way relevant to the research that's being undertaken. And that is managed by the chair. For the most part, it varies by discipline, but for the most part, the audiences don't have much in the way of questions. After that, if there are no more questions or time is short, then we ask everybody to beat it. And then we have what is called the in-camera session, where the chair manages the process of the discussion about what the outcome for the particular student is going to be. And then we reconvene and deliver the news to the student. So, there are differences between the master's and PhD, because the master's defenses are all managed by the individual departments. So we don't have any involvement, with the exception of the format checking of the thesis. There are 4 possible outcomes. Oh, by the way, this is something I should mention. We send we send the dissertation out to the external examiner 4 weeks, at least 1 month, before the proposed examination date. 1 week before the examination, we try to hold the external examiner to providing a written assessment and a written documentation of whether in their assessment this work is ready for defense. So the reason we do that is if the student has really done has done problematic work here, and it's doubtful whether, it's very doubtful that they're going to be successful in the defense, then we don't want to bring the external examiner in and put the student through this and to have that as an outcome. So what we do is, if the external examiner, and sometimes they do, say this work is not suitable, then we cancel the defense. Now, that does not mean that if you're going to defense, you're going to pass. That is not correct. But it does mean that you've made an initial hurdle, and you're not likely to be terribly embarrassed. Not likely to be terribly embarrassed. It's possible. So let's speak to the terribly embarrassing, or let's speak briefly to the outcomes of the PhD defense. In fact, this is also the case for master's defense. There are 4 possible outcomes. Number 1, accept as submitted. Now this is very unusual, primarily because almost nobody produces a document that doesn't have typos in it, and that would include me. It's very difficult to do. Secondly, sometimes people are, in some disciplines, aren't all that hung up about the typos and editorial stuff, and they might say, this is a really good piece of work, and accept it as submitted. Very unusual, I would say. Of the 85, I would say I think I've seen 2. The second outcome is accepted, subject to changes as specified by the committee. And in the in-camera session, the committee will have a discussion about what was good, what wasn't so good, and what has to be changed before it's accepted. So just to be clear, accepted subject to does not mean accepted. It means accepted when you make these changes. And if they don't make the changes, it's not accepted. The vast majority of defenses end up as accepted subject to change, and the range of change that is required is very high. Sometimes it's relatively trivial kinds of things, like if you didn't use consistent abbreviations for your measurements, and you don't have appropriate labeling on your figures, and this figure didn't make any sense, take it out, that kind of stuff. And usually it's sort of a couple of days to maybe a couple of weeks worth of work, and you're done. Usually there is one page here that is very important. That's the signature page. And everybody on the examining committee has the right, in fact, they have the responsibility to withhold their signature until they're satisfied that